The Valari Empire had never lost a war. Not once. In 4 centuries of expansion across the outer spiral arms, they had conquered 41 inhabited worlds and erased the military ambitions of species older than humanity's written history. Their banners hung above oceans with alien tides. Their language echoed through cities built by civilizations that had once believed themselves eternal. The Valari did not conquer through rage. They conquered through certainty. Every campaign began the same way: intelligence gathering, population assessment, military projection, resource calculation, psychological collapse modeling. Then came compliance. Most species surrendered before the first orbital strike. The few that resisted rarely lasted longer than a month. High Commander Verath stood in silence aboard the Imperial Command Vessel Dominion's Judgment and watched the small blue planet rotate slowly across the tactical display. Earth, 3rd planet from an ordinary yellow star near the edge of a relatively unimportant sector. The intelligence file hovering beside the planet was thin. Very thin. Verath appreciated thin files. Thin files meant predictable outcomes. A younger officer stood nearby waiting for permission to speak. Commander Dorth, efficient, decorated, 12 successful planetary subjugations before reaching his 2nd century of life. Useful. You've reviewed the target? Verath asked. Yes, sir. And? Dorth activated the report. Species designation: human. Pre-FTL civilization with fragmented political systems and no unified planetary command structure. Military technology remains chemically driven, nuclear capable, but strategically primitive. No orbital defense grid. No energy shielding. No interstellar fleet capacity. The holographic globe rotated slowly. Bright clusters of human cities glowed across the night side like scattered sparks. Estimated resistance capability? Verath asked. Limited. Dorth replied immediately. Several major military powers exist, but historical rivalries prevent efficient coordination. Their governments compete constantly. Some actively threaten one another with nuclear weapons. Verath almost smiled. Divided species were easy species. Dorth continued. Their military doctrine focuses heavily on internal conflict, surface warfare only. Their space infrastructure is negligible. 1 orbital station, several hundred satellites. No meaningful combat capability outside atmosphere. Time to submission? 30 days, Dora said. 60 at absolute worst. The room remained quiet except for the low hum of the command deck. Verath studied Earth again. So much water. So many resources. Perfect atmospheric compatibility. The Empire had spent decades searching for another world as efficient for colonization, and now they had found one defended by a species still arguing over borders on its own planet. Fleet allocation? Verath asked. 300 ships would guarantee complete operational dominance. You'll take 200. Dorth hesitated for less than a second. Yes, sir. Verath folded his hands behind his back. If 200 warships cannot conquer a divided pre-FTL civilization, then the issue is not fleet size. Dorth bowed his head slightly. Understood. The meeting should have ended there. It almost did. But another officer stepped forward from the tactical pit below. Commander, she said carefully, there is one irregularity. Verath looked down. Explain. The officer expanded the outer regions of the solar system. Near the massive gas giant humans called Jupiter, faint markers appeared in red. Ancient beacons. Inactive. Thousands of years old. Our scouts detected these structures 2 weeks ago, she said. They form a perimeter around the inner system. Dorth frowned slightly. Navigation markers? Possibly, the officer answered. But the placement pattern is unusual. The hologram shifted. The beacons formed a rough sphere around Earth itself. Not around an asteroid field. Not around a radiation zone. Around the inhabited planet. Verath stared at the display for several silent seconds. Origin? Unknown. Threat level? No active systems detected. Dorth exhaled softly. Likely relics from an early survey species. Probably, Verath agreed. Still, something about the pattern bothered him. It looked deliberate, not protective. Warning. But ancient warnings were meaningless. The galaxy was full of extinct species who believed they understood danger. The Valari Empire had conquered many of them. Veyrath dismissed the display with a motion of his hand. Proceed with invasion preparations. Yes, Commander. Across the bridge, officers returned to work. Fleet trajectories appeared across the tactical screens. Jump calculations finalized. Orbital insertion patterns locked. 200 Valari warships prepared to move toward Earth with the calm efficiency of an empire that had done this too many times to imagine failure anymore. Below the tactical display, the human world continued turning silently in darkness. Primitive, divided, young, the perfect conquest target. And somewhere beyond Jupiter, ancient warning beacons drifted in cold silence around the species they had failed to contain. The Valari fleet entered the human solar system on a Tuesday. No alarm sounded on Earth. No defense network activated. No government-issued warnings. Humanity continued exactly as it always had. People sat in traffic beneath gray morning skies. Cargo ships crossed oceans. Students walked into classrooms carrying coffee and unfinished assignments. Politicians argued on television. Factories moved steel across assembly lines. Millions of people stared at glowing screens worrying about bills, deadlines, elections, relationships, weather forecasts. 8 billion human beings lived through another ordinary day completely unaware that 200 alien warships had appeared beyond Neptune. Fleet Commander Doris stood aboard the Steadfast Reach and watched the passive scans update across his tactical display. The fleet remained invisible. Valari dampening fields distorted light signatures and scattered long-range detection attempts into meaningless background noise. Human telescopes lacked the resolution to identify them properly at this distance. Their deep space monitoring systems were decades behind anything capable of detecting a modern invasion fleet. The humans were blind. Passive survey complete. Officer Verith reported from the science station 4 hours later. Dorothy approached her console. Begin summary. The holographic display shifted to Earth. Population, approximately 8 billion, Verith said calmly. Urban concentration across all major continents. Significant industrial development. Moderate orbital infrastructure. No large-scale off-world colonies. She paused briefly before continuing. Military organization remains fragmented as predicted. Multiple competing alliances. Historical hostilities remain active between several nuclear powers. Dorothy nodded once. Exactly as expected. Strategic threat level? Minimal. Verith expanded another series of reports. Nuclear arsenal remains their highest level deterrent capability. Delivery systems are entirely surface-oriented. No orbital combat platforms. No fleet infrastructure. No FTL capability. No energy shielding. Can they detect us? No. Not hesitation. Not uncertainty. Just a simple answer. No. Dorothy looked toward Earth floating far beyond the viewport. Beautiful planet. Easy planet. The conquest model remained stable. Standard procedure would work perfectly. Approach orbit. Broadcast surrender terms. Demonstrate superiority. Secure compliance. 30 days. Maybe less. Move fleet into inter-system formation, Dorothy ordered. The fleet obeyed instantly. 200 warships glided silently through darkness toward the inner planets, while Earth continued spinning peacefully beneath its thin atmosphere. 3 days later, humanity saw them, not through military intelligence, not through classified defense systems. Through a mistake, Dr. Yusef Akari worked alone at a mountaintop observatory in Chile, tracking a comet he had discovered 14 months earlier. The comet was small and unimpressive, but it was his discovery, and he monitored it obsessively with the quiet pride scientist reserved for things nobody else cared about. At 2:14 a.m. local time, while adjusting telescope alignment, he noticed something impossible crossing the edge of the frame. A distortion, a smear of movement where no movement should exist. He frowned, adjusted magnification, looked again, and stopped breathing. 200 objects. Perfect formation. Artificial structure. Moving directly toward Earth. For 4 full seconds, Yusuf sat frozen in his chair. Then he grabbed his phone. The information spread exactly the way catastrophic information always spread. Slowly, then instantly, observatory director, national agencies, military channels, emergency verification, satellite confirmation, government panic. Within 6 hours, every major world government knew alien ships were approaching Earth. Within 12 hours, news networks began leaking fragments. Within 15 hours, social media exploded into chaos. And by the time the Volari fleet entered lunar orbit, humanity was fully awake. The radio noise alone fascinated Dorothy. Fear traveled loudly across human civilization. Every frequency overflowed with signals, panic broadcasts, military chatter, conspiracy theories, religious sermons, emergency meetings, civilian recordings, arguments, predictions, prayers. Humanity had discovered it was not alone, and worse, that it was not safe. Dorothy observed the electromagnetic storm of human communications with calm professionalism. Good. Fear simplified conquest. Fear forced species to calculate survival logically. Soon the governments would do the math. 200 alien warships versus one divided civilization. The surrender would come quickly. It always did. Open all frequencies, Dorothy ordered. The translation matrix activated instantly. For decades, Volari intelligence systems had monitored human broadcasts leaking into space. Human languages, films, military transmissions, entertainment, arguments, music, all of it had been collected and analyzed. The AI now spoke 42 human languages fluently. Dorothy activated the transmission. The message echoed across Earth simultaneously. Every television, every military frequency, every satellite channel, every radio signal, every phone, every screen. People of Earth, your world has been selected for incorporation into the Volari Empire. Resistance is not advised. Your military capabilities are insufficient to oppose us. Surrender all governing and military authority within 12 hours, and your species will be integrated peacefully under imperial protection. Failure to comply will result in military action. You have 12 hours. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Dorothy leaned back into the command chair and waited. 3 hours later, his communications officer turned slowly from her station. Commander, Dorothy looked up. We received a response. Display it. The signal appeared instantly across the central screen. Not from one nation. From all of them. Hundreds of synchronized transmissions merged into one translated message. Dorothy read the response once. Then again. 3 words. Come and try. Silence spread across the bridge. No demands. No fear. No negotiation. Just 3 flat words. Come and try. Dorothy stared at the screen longer than he intended to. Something about the message felt wrong. Not brave. Not emotional. Not desperate. Confident. Almost bored. Like someone opening a door. Behind him, one officer shifted uneasily. Dorothy ignored it. He had received surrender pleas before. Defiant threats before. Silence before. But never this. Never a species facing impossible odds responding like this was merely an inconvenience. For the first time since entering the system, Dorothy thought briefly about the ancient warning beacons near Jupiter. Then he pushed the thought aside. Prepare orbital strike sequence, he said coldly. The bridge immediately returned to motion. Military targets only. Demonstration scale. We show them the gap between their capability and ours. Outside the viewport, Earth rotated peacefully beneath the stars. And somewhere on that planet, 8 billion humans were already preparing for war. The first strike lasted 11 minutes. Fleet Commander Dorothy designed it carefully. Precise, controlled, educational. The goal was not annihilation. The goal was understanding. He wanted humanity to see the difference between resistance and survival. Volari warships positioned themselves across orbital lanes above the northern hemisphere, while targeting systems locked onto military infrastructure around the planet. Airfields, radar networks, naval ports, command centers, missile facilities, no civilian zones, no population centers, just demonstrations of power. Fire, blue-white kinetic lances fell through the atmosphere like artificial meteors. Human radar systems detected them too late. Military installations disappeared in flashes of collapsing steel and vaporized concrete. Underground bunkers folded inward under concentrated energy pulses. Entire air bases vanished before pilots reached their aircraft. Across Earth, governments watched helplessly as 42 strategic military sites were erased with terrifying accuracy. The attacks ended exactly 11 minutes after they began. No wasted shots. No unnecessary destruction. The Volari could strike anywhere on Earth whenever they wished. That was the message. Dorothy reviewed the results calmly. Collateral damage? Minimal. Military effectiveness? Complete. Good. The humans had now seen reality. Surely now the rational leaders would emerge. Surely now surrender negotiations would begin. Dorothy activated the second transmission. This demonstration confirms the futility of resistance. Your military infrastructure can be eliminated at our discretion. Surrender now and avoid further loss of life. You have 12 more hours. The signal echoed across Earth. Then the fleet waited again. 4 hours later, humanity answered. Again, not one nation. All of them. One message assembled from thousands of simultaneous transmissions. We are still here. Come down and fight properly. Dorothy read the response twice. Beside him, Commander Seville spoke quietly. That is not a rational reaction. No, Dorothy admitted. It isn't. For the first time, uncertainty touched the edge of the bridge atmosphere. Tiny, almost invisible, but present. Dorothy studied the rotating planet below. Orbital bombardment clearly wasn't enough. Humans needed physical demonstration, occupation, presence. They needed to see Volari soldiers walking through their cities. Most species psychologically collapse once conquest became tangible. That will end this, Dorothy said finally, more to himself than anyone else. Seville did not answer. Prepare ground operations. 3 landing zones were selected. 1 in North America, 1 in Central Europe, 1 in East Asia. Large cities. High visibility. Maximum psychological impact. Exactly 1 hour before dawn local time, Volari landing craft entered Earth's atmosphere. The descent was magnificent. Massive black transports pierced the clouds surrounded by escort ships glowing blue against the upper atmosphere. Their engines thundered across sleeping cities while civilians watched from rooftops, windows, highways, and terrified crowded streets. Then the ships landed. Parks, airfields, open public spaces. The Volari emerged in perfect formation. Tall, armored, disciplined. Their composite battle plating could survive direct human ballistic fire without difficulty. Their energy rifles were generations beyond anything Earth possessed. To human eyes, they looked unstoppable. And for the first 30 minutes, they were. Civilians fled in panic. Traffic collapsed into chaos. Human police and military forces near the landing zones were overwhelmed immediately. Scattered resistance positions opened fire and were erased seconds later by coordinated Volari return fire. Entire city blocks fell silent as the invaders advanced methodically through urban streets. Everything matched projection. Dorothy watched the live battlefield feeds with growing confidence. The demonstrations were working. Humanity simply needed time to process defeat. Then the pattern changed. At first, nobody noticed, not even the battlefield commanders. Human civilians stopped running. Not everywhere. Not all at once. Small groups at first. People who should have continued fleeing suddenly turned around instead. Some disappeared into buildings. Others moved underground. Subways, parking structures, maintenance tunnels, basements, storm drains. The humans were not escaping the city. They were sinking into it. Ground Commander Test noticed the second problem 37 minutes into the operation. Resistance fire patterns changed. Instead of organized military defense lines, attacks began emerging from impossible directions. A Volari squad advancing down a commercial avenue took simultaneous fire from 3 separate upper-floor positions. The shooters vanished before counterfire connected. Another squad cleared a building only to receive attacks from behind moments later. One formation entered a department store and emerged missing 3 soldiers entirely. No energy discharges. No distress calls. Just gone. The city itself seemed to be swallowing troops. Dorothy frowned at the incoming reports. Clarify enemy force structure. Test answered from the ground feed, visibly irritated. We can't. What do you mean you can't? They are not operating like a conventional military. Live combat footage flashed across the tactical display. Human fighters moved through streets in mixed clothing, military uniforms, civilian jackets, construction gear, police armor, ordinary street clothes. Some were trained soldiers. Some clearly were not, but all of them fought. And worse, they fought intelligently. Improvised explosives detonated beneath Valari patrol routes exactly where heavy formations were forced to move. Rooftop teams attacked from sensor blind spots. Underground tunnels allowed rapid movement across entire districts. The humans refused open battle completely. Every time Valari troops pushed forward, the resistance dissolved, then reappeared somewhere else. Dorotha's tactical confidence began developing cracks. Casualty report. 11 dead, an officer answered. Dorothy turned slowly. Repeat. 11 confirmed dead, 43 wounded. Silence spread briefly across the bridge. 11 soldiers, dead, against a primitive species with chemically propelled weapons. That number was wrong. Completely wrong. Dorothy immediately opened direct command channels to all landing sites. Explain the resistance. Ground Commander Test answered first. His voice remained professional. But careful now. Too careful. They understand urban warfare at a level outside our projections, Test said. Every structure becomes a defensive position. Every underground network becomes a movement corridor. They're not trying to defeat us directly. They're trying to exhaust us. Central Command? Central Command? I can't identify one. Dorothy narrowed his eyes. What? They coordinate without visible hierarchy. Another explosion echoed through the background transmission. Tess continued speaking calmly over distant gunfire. Some resistance elements appear civilian, others military. The distinction is becoming operationally meaningless. Dorothy ended the call. Another battlefield report arrived instantly. 3 city blocks recaptured by human forces in Asia. Improvised explosives destroying armor patrol routes in Europe. Underground ambushes expanding in North America. The casualty number climbed again while he watched. 17 dead, 24, 31. The projections were breaking. Not tactically, conceptually. Dorothy requested immediate historical analysis on human warfare. The results disturbed him more than the battlefield footage. 10,000 years of continuous conflict. Humans had fought. Deserts, jungles, mountains, frozen wastelands, underground tunnels, oceans, megacities. And over thousands of years they had developed one specific doctrine exceptionally well: how to fight enemies stronger than themselves. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare, insurgency. The strategy was brutally simple. If you cannot win directly, make victory impossible. Doris stared at the reports for a long time, then slowly remembered the message humanity had sent. Come and try. Not a threat, not bravado. An invitation. Come here. Fight us here. See what happens. For the first time in 12 campaigns, Fleet Commander Dorothy experienced something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not yet. But the uncomfortable realization that the war unfolding beneath him was not the war he believed he had started. On the 4th day, Fleet Commander Dorothy stopped sleeping. Not intentionally. Sleep simply became irrelevant. The battlefield reports never slowed long enough for rest. Every hour the tactical situation grew more complicated. Every hour the humans became harder to predict. Doris stood inside the command bridge surrounded by holographic casualty projections and tried to locate the moment the invasion was supposed to stabilize. It never did. 119 Valari soldiers were dead, 241 wounded, and the numbers kept rising. Not rapidly. That was a disturbing part. Steadily, like a machine slowly grinding forward. The Valari still controlled orbital space, still controlled the skies, still held overwhelming technological superiority. But on the ground, the cities belonged to humanity. Every district became hostile after sunset. Human resistance fighters moved through darkness with terrifying confidence. They knew every stairwell, every alley, every maintenance tunnel, every hidden route between buildings. Valari's sensors were advanced. Human familiarity was better. At night, entire squads vanished. Patrols entered cleared sectors and disappeared without firing a shot. Supply convoys hit roads confirmed secure only minutes earlier and detonated under hidden explosives. No front lines existed anymore. Only pressure. Constant pressure. Humanity attacked like water finding cracks in stone. Ground Commander Test transmitted another combat update from North America. "We're losing area control faster than we establish it," he reported. "The humans abandoned territory during direct assault, then return behind us after we advance." "Civilian support?" Test hesitated. "Total." Dorth looked up sharply. "What?" "There is no meaningful separation between civilian and military infrastructure anymore." The battlefield footage confirmed it. Apartment buildings housed ammunition caches. Restaurants became medical stations. Office towers functioned as sniper nests. Subway systems moved fighters beneath Valari patrol routes. Entire cities were reorganizing themselves around resistance, without orders, without central coordination, without hesitation. That disturbed Dorth more than the casualties. No species should mobilize as quickly. Not divided species, not primitive species, but humanity adapted almost instantly, like they had rehearsed the scenario before. Dorth initiated a full historical intelligence review. He wanted everything, not summaries, not tactical briefings. Everything. What the intelligence division returned after 8 hours changed the entire shape of the war. Humanity had not experienced war occasionally. Humanity had experienced war constantly. 10,000 consecutive years of organized violence. There had never been a single fully peaceful year in recorded human history. Not one. The analysts displayed historical footage across the command chamber. Trench warfare, urban rebellions, jungle ambushes, desert insurgencies, frozen invasions, underground tunnel systems, guerrilla campaigns, world wars, civil wars, revolutions. Humanity had fought everywhere, against everyone, at every scale imaginable. Millions dead, entire civilizations erased. And from every conflict they learned something new. Dorth watched the data silently. The realization spreading through him felt cold. The humans were not improvising resistance. They were repeating ancient instincts. This was cultural memory, generational, buried deep inside the species itself. One analyst enlarged a section of the report. Asymmetric warfare doctrine, she explained carefully. Dorth read the translated principles appearing across the screen. When facing a superior enemy, avoid direct confrontation, exploit terrain, stretch enemy logistics, force psychological exhaustion, make occupation cost more than victory. Dorth stared at the words. This was not desperation. This was specialization. The humans had spent thousands of years mastering the exact type of warfare required against stronger opponents. That was why they weren't collapsing. That was why the resistance strengthened every day instead of weakening. The species wasn't panicking. The species was transitioning, adapting from peace into survival mode. And once humanity entered survival mode, everything changed. Another transmission interrupted the briefing. Asian combat zone. Emergency priority. The battlefield feed opened instantly. Valari troops moving through a damaged city avenue. Then the street exploded upward. The blast tore armored soldiers apart from below. Human-made explosives hidden beneath the road's surface detonated with perfect timing. Secondary fire erupted immediately from rooftops, windows, collapsed buildings, underground entrances. The ambush lasted 48 seconds. When it ended, 17 Valari soldiers were dead. The humans vanished again before aerial reinforcements arrived. Dorth muted the transmission slowly. Nobody in the command room spoke, because everyone had finally understood the same thing. This was not a rebellion anymore. It was planetary warfare. Intelligence Officer Ricketts stepped forward carefully. "There is another development," he said. Dorth looked at him. Ricketts activated intercepted communications. Human military channels flooded the display. Russian officers coordinating logistics with American commanders. Chinese satellite systems sharing targeting data with Europe, Indian engineering teams distributing anti-armor schematics globally in real time, Middle Eastern states transferring fuel reserves to former rivals. Nations that spent decades threatening each other were now functioning like parts of one military organism. Dorothy watched the recording silently. One intercepted conversation replayed across the room. A Russian commander spoke first. "Whatever else happens later, brother, we deal with this first." An American admiral answered immediately. "Agreed." Then they returned to discussing artillery coordination. No politics, no ideology, no hesitation. Humanity had discovered a common enemy, and the effect was catastrophic. All major powers are cooperating now. Rickett explained quietly. Some of these nations were near active conflict days ago. They abandoned it almost instantly. How long did unification take? Dorothy asked. Rickett answered without emotion. For days. The room fell silent again. For days. An entire species had reorganized itself into a wartime coalition in less than one planetary week. Dorothy walked slowly toward the massive viewport overlooking Earth. From orbit, the planet still looked peaceful. Clouds drifting across oceans. City lights glowing softly in darkness. Beautiful. Fragile. Easy. But now he understood the intelligence failure. The file had described humanity accurately. Divided. Aggressive. Chaotic. Young. What the file failed to understand was what happened when those traits combined under pressure. Humans did not become weaker during crisis. They became focused. And focused humans were something entirely different from the species described in the report. Dorothy opened a secure channel to High Commander Veyrath. His message was brief. "Sir, our conquest model is failing. Human resistance is strengthening instead of collapsing. Historical enemy nations are coordinating militarily at unprecedented speed. Their species possesses extensive doctrine for prolonged asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. I no longer believe a ground campaign will produce surrender." He paused before adding the final line. "There is something about this species our intelligence did not understand." The message transmitted toward Imperial Command. Dorothy remained staring at Earth long after the signal disappeared. Below him, in thousands of underground facilities, military bunkers, factories, research labs, garages, subway tunnels, and converted civilian buildings. Humanity was evolving. And for the first time since the invasion began, the Valari Empire was starting to understand the meaning of the ancient warning beacons drifting silently near Jupiter. 2 days later, another ship entered the solar system. It was not human. It was not Valari. The vessel emerged near the outer system with engines burning hard enough to suggest urgency rather than trade travel. Long-range scans identified the craft immediately. Manath, civilian traders. Old species. Harmless. Dorothy almost ignored the contact request entirely. Almost. Then the transmission arrived on an encrypted Valari military channel. That changed things. "Commander," Seville said quietly, "the Manath vessel is requesting immediate communication priority." Dorothy frowned slightly. Why would traders have military encryption access? "We don't know." Dorothy stared at the incoming signal for several silent seconds, then nodded, put them through. The holographic transmission formed slowly above the command deck. An old Manath appeared. Ancient, even by alien standards. Thin gray skin stretched tightly over narrow features. Their species normally projected calm detachment during conversation, but this one looked deeply unsettled. Its eyes moved constantly. That alone disturbed Dorothy. "Fleet Commander," the old Manath said immediately. "Listen carefully. You need to leave the system." No greeting. No diplomacy. Just fear. Dorothy remained expressionless. "We are conducting an authorized Imperial operation. You don't understand what you are doing." The Manatha's voice sharpened. "We saw the marker beacons and turned our ship around immediately. We came back at maximum burn specifically to warn you." Dorothy felt cold tension creep slowly into the bridge atmosphere. The beacons again. Always the beacons. "What are they?" Dorothy asked quietly. The old trader stared at him in disbelief. "You truly don't know?" "No." For several seconds, the Manath simply closed its eyes. then spoke softly. They were placed by the veil. The entire bridge went silent. Even Seville stiffened beside him. The veil were not legends exactly. They were worse. Ancient, the oldest known interstellar civilization in recorded galactic history. A species so advanced that most modern empires still barely understood fragments of their surviving technology. And they had vanished thousands of years ago without explanation. Dorothy spoke carefully now. The veil marked Earth? Yes. Why? The Manaf looked toward the holographic image of Earth rotating beside the tactical display, then answered with visible reluctance. Because they ran the projections. Dorothy narrowed his eyes. What projections? The old trader inhaled slowly. The veil studied developing species constantly. They observed civilizations over centuries and mapped their evolutionary trajectories. The Manaf paused. When they found humanity, the projections frightened them. The bridge remained completely silent. Dora felt something unfamiliar settling slowly into his chest. Not fear, not yet, but proximity to it. The veil placed warning beacons around the system 3,000 years ago. The trader continued. Every major species in this region knows what they mean. Dorothy's voice lowered, which is... The Manaf answered immediately. Do not interfere. Do not contact. Do not invade. The words seemed to hang in the air long after they were spoken. Dorothy folded his hands behind his back. That warning is for a pre-FTL species? They were pre-FTL when the markers were placed. Dorothy stared at the trader. And still the veil considered them dangerous? The old Manaf looked directly into his eyes. Not dangerous. Worse. Inevitable. Silence spread across the bridge again. Dorothy felt every officer listening now. The trader continued. 3 species ignored the warnings before the beacons were finalized. Dorothy spoke quietly. What happened to them? The old Manaf answered without hesitation. They no longer exist. Something cold moved through the command deck. Dorothy forced himself to remain calm. Humanity destroyed them? The Manaf shook its head slowly. No, humanity absorbed them. Dorothy frowned. I don't understand. You will. The trader activated archived records across the transmission field. Ancient battle images appeared. Ruined alien ships. Human soldiers carrying unfamiliar weapons. Primitive Earth technology merged with foreign engineering. Recovered propulsion systems. Reverse-engineered armor. Adapted energy systems. Humanity learning. Always learning. The Manatha's voice became quieter. The first invaders came when humanity still used crude chemical weapons. They expected an easy conquest. The images shifted again. Human factories rebuilding alien machinery. Scientists dismantling captured systems. Prototype weapons evolving generation by generation. The second species arrived later. The trader continued. By then, humanity had already integrated fragments of the first invasion. Another shift. Human orbital platforms. Improved spacecraft. Advanced missile systems. Faster adaptation. Faster learning. The third species attempted extermination. The final image appeared. Burning fleets. Destroyed alien worlds. Human ships descending through fire. They taught humanity interstellar war. The transmission dimmed slightly. And humanity remembered the lesson. Dora stared silently at the ancient records. Every piece of information aligned perfectly with the current invasion. The captured weapons. The modified missiles. The reverse engineering. The impossible speed of adaptation. The old Manaf leaned forward slightly. The veil realized something critical about humanity very early. Dorothy looked up slowly. What? The trader answered with absolute seriousness. Humans evolve fastest under pressure. No one spoke. The old Manaf continued. The veil believed humanity was still immature, still developing, still becoming whatever it will eventually become. Its eyes shifted toward Earth again. The warning markers exist because the veil concluded something no other species wanted to believe. Dorothy's voice dropped almost to a whisper. And that is... The Manaf answered softly. If you invade humanity before they mature naturally, you accelerate the process. The bridge suddenly felt colder. Dorothy remembered the casualty reports. The missiles, the urban warfare, the captured weapons. The human engineers already analyzing Valari technology, every battle teaching them something new, every engagement making them stronger. The Manath spoke one final time. The species that teaches humanity how to fight in space does not survive the lesson. Silence. Absolute silence. Then the traitor said quietly, "Leave now." Dora turned slowly toward the viewport overlooking Earth. The planet still appeared harmless from orbit. Blue oceans, white clouds, golden city lights. Small, fragile, young. But now he understood the true horror of the warning. Humanity was not dangerous because of what it was. Humanity was dangerous because of what it was becoming. And the Valari Empire had just become its teacher. By day 9, the war no longer resembled an invasion. It resembled an experiment spiraling out of control. Fleet Commander Dora stood over the tactical display, watching red warning indicators multiply across orbital space, while exhaustion hollowed the edges of his thoughts. The numbers still favored the Valari overwhelmingly. 200 warships, complete orbital superiority, energy weapons centuries ahead of human technology. On paper, victory remained mathematically certain. But mathematics had started failing because the humans kept changing the equation. Surface launch detected. The sensor officer announced suddenly. Dorothy barely looked up. Human ballistic missiles launched constantly now. Most never reached orbital altitude. The Valari point defense systems destroyed them easily. Routine. Predictable. Then the officer's voice changed. "Commander, trajectory analysis is wrong." Dorothy turned immediately. "What?" The tactical projection expanded. A human missile climbed upward through the atmosphere. Not arcing. Climbing. Straight toward orbit. Dorothy moved to the console in 4 quick steps. The data streamed rapidly across the screen. Modified propulsion stages. Extended burn duration. Rewritten guidance systems. The humans had taken an ordinary surface-to-surface nuclear missile and redesigned it for orbital engagement. In less than 9 days, Dora felt the bridge atmosphere tighten instantly. Intercept. The order snapped across the command deck. Valari point defense batteries fired automatically. The incoming missile detonated 40 kilometers from the fleet in a burst of nuclear light that flashed across the viewport like a miniature artificial sun. Destroyed, but not irrelevant, because moments later, more launches appeared. Then more. 14 simultaneous launches from 6 different nations. Different missile designs. Different engineering approaches. Different modifications. All created independently. All arriving at the same conclusion. Humanity had solved the orbital weapons problem. The bridge filled with overlapping warnings. Tracking multiple intercept vectors. Point defense systems engaging. Nuclear signatures confirmed. Bright explosions ignited across orbital space as Valari defenses destroyed incoming missiles one after another. Most failed. One didn't. The escort cruiser Persistent Victory took a direct proximity detonation beneath its forward sensor array before defensive systems reacquired the target. The blast ripped open armored sections across the ship's hull. 37 Valari casualties. 1 warship damaged. Not destroyed, but damaged by a species officially classified as incapable of orbital warfare. Silence spread slowly across the bridge. No officer spoke, because everyone understood what this meant. Humanity had looked at an impossible problem for approximately 1 week, and engineered a partial solution using existing technology. Dora stared at the damage report for several long seconds, then spoke quietly. "Recall the ground forces." Seville turned sharply. "Commander?" "All of them. Our troops are still engaged inside urban sectors." "I know." Dorothy's voice remained perfectly calm. "Extract them anyway." No one argued after hearing his tone. The command spread instantly across the fleet. Emergency withdrawal procedures activated at all 3 planetary combat zones. Landing craft descended through atmosphere under full escort coverage while Valari ground forces began fighting backward toward extraction points. And humanity attacked harder than ever. The humans had anticipated retreat. That realization disturbed Dorothy almost as much as the missile launches. Anti-air systems dormant for days suddenly activated during extraction windows. Hidden artillery positions emerged from urban cover. Mobile missile batteries appeared across rooftops and highways with terrifying coordination. The humans were adapting in real time, learning Valari behavior patterns, predicting tactical responses. 3 landing craft suffered critical damage before clearing atmosphere. One exploded entirely above the Asian combat zone. 40 soldiers lost instantly. The surviving transports escaped under continuous fire, while millions of humans watched from below and cheered. Dorth heard the recordings himself through intercepted civilian broadcasts. Crowds screaming with triumph. Cities celebrating. Humanity believed it had pushed back an alien invasion, and for the first time, Dorth thought they might be right. The ground withdrawal completed 12 hours later. The Valari fleet repositioned into higher orbital patterns outside immediate missile range, while damage control teams rushed across multiple ships. Dorth stood inside the command bridge surrounded by casualty projections and manufacturing estimates, while humanity transformed beneath him. Factories operated continuously across every major continent. Civilian industries converted into weapons production lines. Universities became military research hubs. Engineering data flowed globally across human networks without restriction. Every nation shared discoveries instantly. Every breakthrough spread planet-wide within minutes. Vareth entered the bridge carrying updated intelligent projections. Her expression alone warned him the news was bad. How many missiles? Dorth asked immediately. We estimate several hundred modified systems already operational. Dorth closed his eyes briefly. Impossible, and yet somehow predictable now. How are they doing this so quickly? Vareth activated another report. They're sharing all research data globally in real time. Every engineering team on the planet is effectively working as one distributed research network. The display shifted again. Recovered Valari rifles appeared across the screen. Captured weapons. Dorth felt cold realization settle deeper inside him. How many? Approximately 400 recovered from ground engagements. Seville spoke immediately. They can't reverse engineer our technology in days. Probably not fully, Vareth admitted carefully. Then she hesitated. That hesitation terrified Dorth more than the answer. What? Vareth looked directly at him. They've already begun. The room went silent again. She expanded intercepted human research transmissions. Thousands of scientists. Open-source engineering forums. Military laboratories. Civilian universities. All analyzing captured Valari technology simultaneously. The humans weren't hiding the research. They were distributing it. Planet-wide, every discovery instantly shared with every other research group on Earth. Dorth stared at the data while the Manath trader's warning replayed endlessly inside his mind. They absorb everything. Weapons, technology, tactics, knowledge. Then they evolve. How long until they produce functional copies? Dorth asked quietly. Vareth answered honestly. I don't know. That answer frightened him more than any battlefield report, because Valari intelligence always knew, always predicted, always calculated. But humanity refused calculation. There was no baseline for a species that adapted this aggressively under pressure. No historical model. No stable projection. Only acceleration. On day 12, humanity crossed another line entirely. 3 human orbital vehicles launched from Earth at extreme velocity toward the Valari fleet. Not missiles. Boarding craft. Dorth watched the trajectories appear across the tactical display in disbelief. They're carrying soldiers? Seville asked. Yes. They're attacking warships directly? Yes. The human craft were crude, repurposed orbital vehicles stripped of unnecessary weight and overloaded with reaction fuel. Primitive, inefficient, suicidal, and somehow effective. Valari defense systems destroyed 2 before impact. The 3rd slammed violently into the hull of the escort vessel Quiet Authority. Then 23 human soldiers entered the ship. What followed became one of the most studied military disasters in Valari history. 23 humans against 480 crew members. Inside a foreign vessel they had never seen before. The engagement lasted 22 hours. 22. The humans fought through corridors using stolen weapons, improvised explosives, environmental systems, maintenance tunnels, and raw aggression. But the worst part wasn't the casualties. It was their objective. They weren't trying to destroy the ship. They were studying it. Every system they reached was photographed, recorded, dismantled, analyzed. Weapons, navigation, propulsion, communications, all transmitted back to Earth in real time. When the last surviving humans finally surrendered, the Quiet Authority commander filed a report containing one-line Dorothy read 3 separate times. The human soldiers surrendered with complete satisfaction because the mission succeeded, not military victory. Education. Again, everything was education. Dora sat alone inside the darkened bridge long after the report ended, then slowly opened a secure channel to High Commander Veyrath. His message was short, brutally honest. We are no longer fighting a primitive species. We are fighting a species that becomes more dangerous every hour this war continues. He stopped typing briefly, then added the sentence he never imagined writing in 12 campaigns. We are not losing, but we are no longer winning. High Commander Veyrath received Dorothy's report 71 minutes later. He read it twice, then a third time, not because the words were unclear, because they were impossible. We are no longer winning. The sentence sat on his private command display like corruption inside a sacred text. The Valari Empire did not lose campaigns. It certainly did not struggle against isolated pre-FTL civilizations. And yet the casualty reports arriving from Earth no longer resembled conquest metrics. They resembled escalation curves. Veyrath stood alone inside the strategic chamber aboard Dominion's judgment, while the holographic image of Earth rotated silently before him. Blue, small, insignificant. He hated looking at it now. A senior intelligence advisor entered carefully. Commander? Veyrath did not turn around. How long until reinforcement fleets arrive? 23 days minimum. Too long. Everything about this campaign suddenly felt too slow, too exposed, too uncertain. Dorothy's reports continued flooding Imperial command channels. Orbital missile adaptation, successful boarding actions, accelerated reverse engineering, unified planetary coordination, expanding weapons development. Every new report carried the same hidden implication. Humanity was speeding up. The Empire had intended to conquer Earth. Instead, it had activated Earth. That realization spread quietly through the upper command structure like poison. Officially, the Valari position remained stable. Unofficially, panic had begun. Veyrath called an emergency strategic council. Within the hour, 12 senior military authorities appeared through holographic transmission across the chamber. Some looked irritated, others skeptical. 1 or 2 already looked afraid. Fleet strategist Moker spoke first. The solution is simple. Escalate orbital bombardment. Remove industrial infrastructure and population centers until organized resistance collapses. Several commanders nodded immediately. That was standard doctrine. Efficient, predictable, logical. But Dorothy's reports kept replaying in Veyrath's mind. They are not behaving as a species under conquest. They are behaving as a species under education. What happens, Veyrath asked slowly, if orbital annihilation accelerates adaptation further? The room fell briefly silent. Moker frowned. They are surface-bound primitives. Primitives, Veyrath repeated quietly, who modified ballistic missiles for orbital warfare in 9 days. No one answered. Another commander activated combat projections. Their current military capacity remains negligible compared to ours. For now, Veyrath said. That phrase changed the room instantly. For now. Not one Valari commander liked hearing future uncertainty attached to an enemy species, especially not the species. Another transmission request interrupted the council. Priority Black-level intelligence. Veyrath accepted immediately. A Valari research director appeared on the central display, visibly shaken. Commander, we intercepted new human research traffic. Explain. The scientists swallowed once before speaking. They've successfully replicated portions of our energy containment architecture. The room exploded instantly. That's impossible. They barely understand principles. They don't have the manufacturing precision. They shouldn't even know where to begin. The scientist raised shaking hands. I know. Then activated the evidence. Human laboratory footage appeared. Primitive compared to Valari engineering. Crude, improvised, but functional. A rough human-built energy weapon discharged across the screen. Unstable, weak, dangerous to operate, and absolutely real. Silence crashed down across the strategic chamber. Veyrath stared at the footage without blinking. 12 days. 12. A species without interstellar travel had begun reproducing alien weapons technology in less than 2 planetary weeks. The Manath warning suddenly stopped sounding superstitious. One commander spoke carefully. How widespread is this development? The scientist answered immediately. We don't know. Human information sharing networks are completely unrestricted now. Every discovery propagates globally within minutes. Another pause. Then the scientist added quietly, they're improving faster every day. No one spoke after that, because everyone understood the implications. If humanity continued adapting at this speed, then time itself had become the enemy, not the humans. Time. Every hour strengthened Earth. Every battle taught them more. Every destroyed Valari weapon became research material. Every tactical engagement became education. Veyrath finally ended the silence. How long until they produce operational ship-scale weapons? The scientist hesitated too long. That uncertainty is unacceptable. Veyrath snapped. I can't give certainty anymore, the scientist admitted suddenly. None of us can. The room froze. Valari's science existed on certainty. Projection, calculation, probability. Humanity was breaking all of it. The scientists looked exhausted now. We don't have historical comparisons for the species. They absorb information at abnormal speed under existential pressure. Existential pressure. The exact environment the Valari invasion had created. Veyrath dismissed the transmission and turned back toward Earth again. Still blue, still peaceful from orbit, still deceptive. He suddenly understood the real meaning behind the ancient warning beacons. The Veil had not been warning the galaxy about humanity's current power. They were warning the galaxy about humanity's potential, and the Valari Empire had just accelerated that potential violently. Another emergency signal interrupted the chamber, this time from Dorith directly. The fleet commander appeared exhausted beyond concealment now. Eyes darkened, voice controlled only through discipline. Commander, Dorith said immediately, we detected new construction activity across Earth orbit. Veyrath narrowed his eyes. What kind of construction? Dorith activated the scans. Human orbital stations, weapon platforms, manufacturing arrays. Small, primitive, but increasing daily. They're industrializing near-space operations already. Dorith continued. At current acceleration rates, they may establish combat-capable orbital infrastructure within months. Months. The strategic chamber absorbed that word in silence. Months. Not centuries. Not decades. Months. Humanity was evolving through warfare faster than any species in Valari records. One council member finally spoke the thought none of them wanted voiced. What happens if they reach parity? Nobody answered immediately, because for the first time in Imperial history, that question had no safe answer. Dorith broke the silence quietly. With respect, Commander, I don't believe parity is the real concern anymore. Veyrath looked at him slowly. Explain. Dorith's exhausted eyes shifted briefly toward Earth behind him. The concern, he said carefully, is what happens if they surpass the point where conquest is possible. Silence. Absolute silence. Then another transmission arrived from Earth itself. Not military. Not diplomatic. Broadcast openly across every frequency the Valari used. Human voices. Millions of them. Singing. Different languages. Different nations. Different cultures. One species. Unified. The sound echoed through Valari command channels, while Earth rotated below like a waking machine. And for the first time since the campaign began, the Valari Empire understood something horrifying. Humanity was no longer fighting to survive. Humanity was learning how to win. By day 21, Earth no longer looked like an invaded planet. It looked like a civilization transforming itself in real time. Fleet Commander Dorth watched thousands of new heat signatures bloom across the surface, while orbital surveillance struggled to keep pace with human industrial expansion. Entire cities operated without sleep now. Factories glowed through the night. Transportation systems moved continuously. Military production spread across continents like wildfire. Humanity had entered total war mobilization faster than any species in Valari records. And worse, they were improvising successfully. New orbital platforms appeared every 48 hours. Most were crude, some barely functional. But each generation improved visibly. The humans learned through iteration. Failure did not discourage them. Failure accelerated them. Dorth understood now why the Veil had feared the species. Humanity treated catastrophe as education. A sensor officer broke the silence. Multiple launches detected. Dorth looked up immediately. The tactical display expanded. Hundreds of launch signatures erupted from Earth simultaneously. Not missiles. Cargo, construction modules, personnel transports. Humanity was flooding near-orbital space with everything it could launch. Civilian rockets, military boosters, experimental vehicles, repurposed industrial systems. Anything capable of escaping atmosphere became part of the war effort. "They're building too fast," Seville muttered quietly. Dorth did not answer, because Seville was correct. The humans had stopped thinking like separate nations entirely. Earth now behaved like a single organism responding to infection. Every scientist, every engineer, every factory worker, every military strategist, all focused on one objective: push the invaders back. The terrifying part was how naturally humanity adapted to cooperation once survival became universal. Old political rivalries still existed. Old hatred still existed, but they had become secondary. The war came first. Dorth reviewed intercepted human communications constantly now. What he found disturbed him more each day. Human civilians volunteered for military labor without orders. University students worked weapons development around the clock. Competing corporations openly shared classified technology with rivals. Engineers distributed breakthrough designs freely across global networks. Nobody protected intellectual property anymore. Nobody protected secrets. Humanity had abandoned competition for speed, and the speed was becoming terrifying. Vareth entered the bridge carrying another intelligence update. Dorth already disliked her expression. What now? They successfully stabilized second-generation energy weapons. Dorth closed his eyes briefly. How many? We estimate several hundred prototypes already operational. The bridge fell silent again. Human-made energy weapons, weak compared to Valari rifles. Unstable, dangerous, but real and improving. Every version closer to functional military parity. Vareth activated battlefield footage from Earth. Human soldiers testing captured Valari armor, reverse-engineered shield systems, modified targeting software, adapted power cells. The humans weren't copying Valari technology directly anymore. They were redesigning it, improving compatibility, simplifying manufacturing, making it scalable. They're integrating our systems into their existing infrastructure. Vareth explained carefully, not replacing human technology, combining it. That was somehow worse. Valari engineering required specialized manufacturing chains and rigid operational standards. Humans ignore rigidity entirely. They adapted alien systems into whatever already existed. Fast, messy, effective. Dorth remembered the Manatha's warning again. They absorb everything. Yes, that was exactly what humanity was doing. Another alarm interrupted the briefing. Unidentified vessels approaching. The tactical display expanded instantly. Dozens of small craft rising from Earth orbit. Improvised warships. Dorth stared in disbelief. They looked absurd. Civilian hulls reinforced with industrial plating. Cargo transports carrying weapon pods. Mining vessels converted into attack craft. Construction vehicles welded into crude combat formations. Primitive, ugly, dangerous. Humanity had built a fleet. Not a good fleet, but a fleet. And they launched it directly toward the Valari blockade, without hesitation. Do they seriously intend combat? One officer asked quietly. Dorothy watched the approaching vessels carefully. No, he understood immediately. The humans were testing, measuring, learning. Again, Valari fighters intercepted the incoming formation outside lunar orbit. The engagement lasted 7 minutes. Human losses were catastrophic. Most of the improvised ships were destroyed almost instantly, but several reached firing range, long enough to gather combat telemetry, long enough to test shield responses, long enough to transmit targeting data back to Earth. And before destruction, one human vessel rammed directly into a Valari destroyer. The collision achieved almost no military damage. But human engineers learned something from the shield interaction during impact. Dorothy knew they learned something because 24 hours later, new weapon signatures appeared across Earth's orbital defenses specifically calibrated against that shield frequency. Humanity was shortening the learning cycle. Battle, analysis, adaptation, redeployment, again and again, faster every time. The war had become evolutionary acceleration, and the Valari Empire was losing control of the pace. High Commander Veyrath transmitted new orders shortly after the engagement. Escalate orbital bombardment immediately. Target industrial zones. Suppress manufacturing capacity before human orbital infrastructure becomes irreversible. Dorothy read the orders silently, then looked down at Earth again. He understood the logic. Destroy the factories. Destroy the infrastructure. Destroy the acceleration. But another realization troubled him deeply now. Every escalation strengthened human unity further. Every bombardment removed hesitation. Every civilian death hardened the species. The humans no longer feared the Valari. They hated them. And hatred was proving more useful than fear ever had. Dorothy obeyed the order anyway. Valari warships repositioned across orbital attack lanes while targeting systems locked onto major manufacturing centers. Then the bombardment began. This time humanity was ready. Missile launches erupted instantly from hidden silos across multiple continents. Orbital defense platforms activated. Improvised energy cannons opened fire from disguised civilian structures. The skies above Earth ignited. Explosions spread across low orbit, while human defense systems hammered Valari formations from every direction available. Primitive attacks, uncoordinated by Valari standards, but relentless. One human orbital platform continued firing even after losing atmosphere and half its structure. Its final transmission echoed across open frequencies before destruction. Still here. Dorothy heard the phrase himself. 3 simple words. Still here. The same message humanity had been sending since the invasion began. The bombardment achieved partial success. Several manufacturing centers destroyed. Orbital infrastructure damaged. Human casualties severe. And yet, 48 hours later, new factories appeared, new launch facilities, new orbital construction. The humans replaced losses almost as quickly as the Valari inflicted them, because Earth itself had become the weapon now. 8 billion minds solving one problem simultaneously. The realization finally settled fully into Dorothy's exhausted thoughts. The Valari Empire could still destroy humanity. Probably, but it could no longer conquer humanity. That opportunity was gone. And every additional day of war pushed the balance further away from the Empire. Seville approached quietly beside him. Commander, Dorothy kept staring at Earth. Yes. Seville hesitated carefully. What happens if they survive this? Dorothy answered without taking his eyes off the planet below. They won't stay here. The bridge fell silent, because everyone understood exactly what he meant. Humanity was entering space. And once humanity truly entered the galaxy would never be safe again. The first Valari ship disappeared on day 27. Not destroyed. Gone. The cruiser Silent Dominion vanished during patrol rotation above the dark side of Earth without transmitting distress signals or battle alerts. One moment it existed on fleet tracking systems. The next, nothing. Fleet-wide emergency scans activated instantly. No debris field. No radiation bloom. No wreckage. Just absence. Dora stared at the tactical display while sensor teams searched orbital space repeatedly. Impossible. Valari ships did not simply vanish, especially not inside secure fleet formations. Could the humans have captured it? Seville asked carefully. Dorothy almost rejected the idea immediately. Almost. Then he remembered the boarding action, the reverse engineering, the shield analysis, the stolen weapons, and worst of all, the speed. Humanity never repeated attacks randomly. Every operation built towards something larger. A second alert interrupted the bridge. Commander, unauthorized signal detected. Source. The officer looked pale. Silent Dominion. Every eye on the bridge snapped toward the display. The signal opened slowly across fleet communications. Static. Distortion. Then, human voices. Not panic. Not chaos. Calm. Professional. A woman appeared on the screen wearing partial Valari combat armor, modified, crudely, for human proportions. Behind her, Valari corridors were visible. Human soldiers moved through them carrying captured energy weapons. Dorothy felt cold disbelief settle into his spine. They took the ship. The woman looked directly into the transmission camera. Fleet Commander Dorothy. She said evenly, "Thank you for the engineering data. No fear. No triumph. Just control focus." Like this was expected. Dorothy spoke slowly. "How?" The woman almost smiled. "You taught us." Silence spread across the bridge. The human officer continued. "Your systems aren't invincible, just unfamiliar." Dorothy realized suddenly what terrified him most. She sounded relaxed, like someone discussing a solved problem. "We reverse engineered your internal communications architecture 3 days ago," she explained. "Your ships are designed against external threats. Nobody expected boarding warfare at scale." Scale. The word landed heavily. Scale implied repetition. More operations. More ships. The human officer stepped aside briefly. The bridge camera showed Valari technology dismantled across workstations, while human engineers documented everything systematically. Again, always learning, always adapting. Dorothy finally understood the true horror of humanity's military culture. Most species fought wars to survive. Humans fought wars to evolve. The transmission ended abruptly. 3 seconds later, the Silent Dominion opened fire on the Valari fleet. Chaos erupted instantly across orbital formations. Captured Valari weapons hammered friendly ships while identification systems struggled to process impossible targeting data. Return fire. Energy batteries ignited across space. The stolen cruiser maneuvered aggressively through fleet formations using Valari tactical protocols against their own creators. Human operators learned frighteningly fast. The engagement lasted only 11 minutes before the Silent Dominion was finally destroyed. But by then, 2 more Valari ships had suffered severe damage, and humanity had achieved something far more important than tactical success. Proof. They proved Valari technology could be captured, understood, used. The psychological damage spread faster than the battle reports. Across the fleet, Valari crews began asking questions nobody had ever asked before. How many systems had the humans already compromised? How many frequencies were monitored? How many weapons understood? How many weaknesses exposed? For the first time in Imperial military history, Valari soldiers feared technological inferiority developing in real time, and the humans accelerated relentlessly. Earth orbit transformed daily. Human warships now emerge continuously from orbital construction platforms, still crude compared to Valari vessels, still weaker, but no longer primitive. Hybrid ships appeared carrying reverse-engineered shield systems, modified energy weapons, adaptive propulsion technology, human missile architecture combined with alien targeting systems. The designs were ugly, functional, human. Every vessel looked assembled by engineers more interested in speed than elegance, and somehow that made them more dangerous. Because humans did not waste time pursuing perfection. They pursued momentum. Dorothy watched another combat simulation update across the tactical display. Projected timelines shifted again. Human technological advancement no longer followed normal developmental curves. It resembled explosion patterns. Each breakthrough accelerating the next, each battle compressing decades of progress into days. Vareth entered carrying updated strategic projections. Her face alone told him enough. How bad? She answered immediately. At current adaptation rates, human fleet capability may reach localized tactical parity within 8 months. The bridge fell completely silent. 8 months, not centuries, not generations. 8 months from primitive species to military parity against an interstellar empire. No one on the bridge knew how to emotionally process numbers like that. Seville finally spoke quietly. That's impossible. Yes, Vareth agreed softly. But it's happening. Another emergency transmission arrived from High Commander Veyrath. Priority supreme. Dorth opened a channel instantly. Veyrath looked older. Not physically. Mentally. The strain showed now. The Imperial Council has reviewed the Earth campaign, he said, without introduction. Dorth waited silently. Veyrath continued. They want escalation. Dorth already expected that. How far? A pause. Then, planetary sterilization authorization is under consideration. The bridge atmosphere froze. Total extinction. Not conquest. Erasure. Dorth looked toward Earth again. He understood the logic. Destroy humanity now before it matured further. End the threat permanently. But another thought surfaced immediately behind it. Would it work? The terrifying part was, Dorth no longer knew. Humanity spread too fast now. Too much captured technology. Too much orbital infrastructure. Too much adaptation. And somewhere beneath all of it, something older existed. The thing the Veil had seen thousands of years ago. The thing hidden inside human potential. Dorth finally spoke carefully. If sterilization fails. Veyrath interrupted immediately. It cannot fail. Dorth said nothing, because both of them knew certainty no longer existed in this war. Suddenly another fleet-wide alert erupted across the bridge. Massive launch signatures detected. The tactical display exploded with movement. Hundreds, then thousands. Human vessels rising from Earth orbit simultaneously, not retreating, advancing. The largest human fleet ever assembled accelerated toward the Volari blockade under full combat burn. Improvised destroyers, converted civilian ships, hybrid war platforms, missile carriers, drone swarms, everything humanity could launch into space. Dorth stared at the approaching formation, primitive by Imperial standards, chaotic, uneven, and absolutely fearless. Earth itself seemed to rise beneath them like a species stepping into the galaxy for the first time. Then open human transmissions flooded every frequency. Military channels, civilian channels, public broadcasts. One message repeated globally across thousands of voices. Not surrender, not negotiation, not survival. Leave. The word echoed across space like a unified planetary commandment. Leave. And for the first time in 400 years, the Volari Empire considered retreat. The first Volari ship disappeared on day 27. Not destroyed. Gone. The cruiser's silent dominion vanished during patrol rotation above the dark side of Earth without transmitting distress signals or battle alerts. One moment it existed on fleet tracking systems. The next, nothing. Fleet-wide emergency scans activated instantly. No debris field. No radiation bloom. No wreckage. Just absence. Dora stared at the tactical display while sensor teams searched orbital space repeatedly. Impossible. Volari ships did not simply vanish. Especially not inside secure fleet formations. Could the humans have captured it? Seville asked carefully. Dorth almost rejected the idea immediately. Almost. Then he remembered the boarding action, the reverse engineering, the shield analysis, the stolen weapons, and worst of all, the speed. Humanity never repeated attacks randomly. Every operation built towards something larger. A second alert interrupted the bridge. Commander, unauthorized signal detected. Source. The officer looked pale. Silent Dominion. Every eye on the bridge snapped toward the display. The signal opened slowly across fleet communications. Static. Distortion. Then, human voices. Not panic. Not chaos. Calm. Professional. A woman appeared on the screen wearing partial Volari combat armor, modified crudely for human proportions. Behind her, Volari corridors were visible. Human soldiers moved through them carrying captured energy weapons. Dorothy felt cold disbelief settle into his spine. They took the ship. The woman looked directly into the transmission camera. Fleet Commander Dorothy, she said evenly, "Thank you for the engineering data." No fear, no triumph, just controlled focus, like this was expected. Dorothy spoke slowly. "How?" The woman almost smiled. "You taught us." Silence spread across the bridge. The human officer continued. "Your systems aren't invincible, just unfamiliar." Dorothy realized suddenly what terrified him most. She sounded relaxed, like someone discussing a solved problem. "We reverse-engineered your internal communications architecture 3 days ago," she explained. "Your ships are designed against external threats. Nobody expected boarding warfare at scale." The word landed heavily. Scale implied repetition. More operations. More ships. The human officer stepped aside briefly. The bridge camera showed Volari technology dismantled across workstations, while human engineers documented everything systematically. Again, always learning, always adapting. Dorothy finally understood the true horror of humanity's military culture. Most species fought wars to survive. Humans fought wars to evolve. The transmission ended abruptly. 3 seconds later, the Silent Dominion opened fire on the Volari fleet. Chaos erupted instantly across orbital formations. Captured Volari weapons hammered friendly ships, while identification systems struggled to process impossible targeting data. Return fire. Energy batteries ignited across space. The stolen cruiser maneuvered aggressively through fleet formations using Volari tactical protocols against their own creators. Human operators learned frighteningly fast. The engagement lasted only 11 minutes before the Silent Dominion was finally destroyed. But by then, 2 more Volari ships had suffered severe damage, and humanity had achieved something far more important than tactical success. Proof. They proved Volari technology could be captured, understood, used. The psychological damage spread faster than the battle reports. Across the fleet, Volari crews began asking questions nobody had ever asked before. How many systems had the humans already compromised? How many frequencies were monitored? How many weapons understood? How many weaknesses exposed? For the first time in Imperial military history, Volari soldiers feared technological inferiority developing in real time, and the humans accelerated relentlessly. Earth orbit transformed daily. Human warships now emerge continuously from orbital construction platforms. Still crude compared to Volari vessels. Still weaker, but no longer primitive. Hybrid ships appeared carrying reverse-engineered shield systems, modified energy weapons, adaptive propulsion technology, human missile architecture, combined with alien targeting systems. The designs were ugly, functional, human. Every vessel looked assembled by engineers more interested in speed than elegance. And somehow, that made them more dangerous. Because humans did not waste time pursuing perfection. They pursued momentum. Dorothy watched another combat simulation update across the tactical display. Projected timelines shifted again. Human technological advancement no longer followed normal developmental curves. It resembled explosion patterns, each breakthrough accelerating the next, each battle compressing decades of progress into days. Verith entered carrying updated strategic projections. Her face alone told him enough. How bad? She answered immediately. At current adaptation rates, human fleet capability may reach localized tactical parity within 8 months. The bridge fell completely silent. 8 months. Not centuries. Not generations. 8 months from primitive species to military parity against an interstellar empire. No one on the bridge knew how to emotionally process numbers like that. Seville finally spoke quietly. That's impossible. Yes, Verith agreed softly. But it's happening. Another emergency transmission arrived from High Commander Veyrath. Priority supreme. Dorothy opened the channel instantly. Veyrath looked older, Not physically. Mentally. The strain showed now. The Imperial Council has reviewed the Earth campaign, he said, without introduction. Dorothy waited silently. Veyrath continued. They want escalation. Dorothy already expected that. How far? A pause. Then, planetary sterilization authorization is under consideration. The bridge atmosphere froze. Total extinction. Not conquest. Erasure. Dorothy looked toward Earth again. He understood the logic. Destroy humanity now before it matured further. End the threat permanently. But another thought surfaced immediately behind it. Would it work? The terrifying part was, Dorothy no longer knew. Humanity spread too fast now. Too much captured technology. Too much orbital infrastructure. Too much adaptation. And somewhere beneath all of it, something older existed. The thing the Veil had seen thousands of years ago. The thing hidden inside human potential. Dorothy finally spoke carefully. If sterilization fails. Veyrath interrupted immediately. It cannot fail. Dorothy said nothing, because both of them knew certainty no longer existed in this war. Suddenly, another fleet-wide alert erupted across the bridge. Massive launch signatures detected. The tactical display exploded with movement. Hundreds, then thousands. Human vessels rising from Earth orbit simultaneously, not retreating, advancing. The largest human fleet ever assembled accelerated toward the Volari blockade under full combat burn, improvised destroyers, converted civilian ships, hybrid war platforms, missile carriers, drone swarms, everything humanity could launch into space. Dorothy stared at the approaching formation, primitive by Imperial standards, chaotic, uneven, and absolutely fearless. Earth itself seemed to rise beneath them like a species stepping into the galaxy for the first time. Then open human transmissions flooded every frequency. Military channels, civilian channels, public broadcasts. One message repeated globally across thousands of voices. Not surrender, not negotiation, not survival. Leave. The word echoed across space like a unified planetary commandment. Leave. And for the first time in 400 years, the Volari Empire considered retreat. The battle for Earth began 3 hours later. Not the invasion, not the occupation. The real battle, the one history would remember. Thousands of human vessels surged outward from Earth orbit in overlapping formations that would have looked disorganized to any other species. To humanity, it was coordinated perfectly. Every ship carried different weapons, different armor, different engines. No standardized fleet doctrine existed yet. Humanity had built its first interstellar war fleet too quickly for uniformity. And somehow that made it harder to fight. Volari targeting systems struggled constantly because every human vessel behaved differently. Some ships fought aggressively. Others functioned as missile carriers. Some existed purely to ram. Others carried electronic warfare systems adapted from captured Volari communications arrays. The humans were improvising warfare on a species-wide scale. And improvisation was becoming unpredictability. Fleet Commander Doris stood at the center of the command bridge, watching the tactical display drown in motion. Human missile storms flooded orbital space. Drone swarms overloaded Volari point defense systems. Captured Volari energy weapons fired back at their creators from hybrid human warships. The impossible had happened. Humanity was fighting an interstellar fleet on nearly equal terms less than a month after first contact. The galaxy would never believe it. Port defense line collapsing. Human breach craft approaching lower formation. Shield synchronization failing across sectors 3 through 7. The bridge erupted with overlapping alerts. Dorothy remained perfectly still, because panic would solve nothing. He watched humanity fight carefully, and finally understood. The Volari Empire had misunderstood the meaning of technological advancement. Most species advance linearly. Step by step, humans advanced through pressure. Crisis accelerated them. War accelerated them. Existential danger accelerated them most of all. The invasion had compressed centuries of human progress into weeks. And now the result was unfolding across orbital space in fire and metal. A human destroyer slammed directly into a Valari cruiser while simultaneously transmitting targeting telemetry to nearby Allied ships. The impact destroyed both vessels. 3 seconds later, human missile batteries exploited the exposed shield harmonics revealed during the collision and crippled another cruiser behind it. The humans learned during combat itself. Every second of battle generated new adaptation. "Commander," Seville said quietly beside him, "they're coordinating faster than our prediction models can update." Dorothy nodded once. "I know." Another explosion lit the viewport. Fragments of burning ships drifted across Earth orbit, while human vessels continued advancing through the debris without hesitation. No retreat, no fear. The humans fought like a species that had already accepted sacrifice before the battle began. And maybe they had. Dora thought about the ancient wars from the intelligence archives. World wars, revolutions, nuclear standoffs. Human history had trained the species for apocalypse long before aliens arrived. That was the truth the Empire never understood. Humanity was not shocked by catastrophic war. Humanity had been preparing for a catastrophic war since the beginning of civilization. Suddenly, the tactical display shifted violently. A massive energy spike erupted near the center of the Valari formation. "Report." The sensor officer looked stunned. They activated a captured reactor core. Dorothy turned sharply. "What?" A human assault group had attached improvised drive systems onto the wreckage of a destroyed Valari cruiser and remotely detonated its reactor inside the fleet formation. The explosion tore through nearby ships in a chain of collapsing shields and expanding plasma fire. Improvised, insane, effective, exactly the kind of tactic humanity specialized in. The battle formation began breaking apart, not collapsing yet, but destabilizing. Humanity sensed it immediately. Their attacks intensified. Entire waves of small human craft dove directly into Valari formations with reckless aggression, while larger hybrid warships concentrated fire against isolated targets. The humans understood momentum instinctively. Once pressure worked, increased pressure. Always. Dorothy realized suddenly that the Valari Empire was no longer controlling the battle. Humanity was. That realization hit harder than any weapon. A transmission request appeared across the command display. Priority Origin, Earth Unified Defense Command. Dorothy accepted automatically. The screen flickered. Then a human appeared. Older male, military uniform, exhausted eyes, calm expression. Behind him, dozens of officers from different nations worked together across a massive command center. Former enemies standing side by side. The human commander spoke quietly. "You should leave." Dorothy almost laughed at the simplicity of it. The human continued. "We know you can still destroy this planet if you commit fully." Dorothy said nothing. "Maybe you succeed," the human admitted. "Maybe you don't." The officer leaned slightly closer toward the camera. "But if you stay, this never stops." Silence filled the bridge. The human commander looked completely sincere, not threatening. Promising. Dorothy understood the difference instantly. "We'll follow you," the human said softly. The words chilled the entire bridge. "If you leave and come back, we'll follow you." Dorothy stared at him, and suddenly understood the veil completely. The danger was never Earth alone. The danger was what humanity became once introduced to the galaxy. The human commander spoke one final sentence. "You came here to conquer a world." A pause. "You accidentally introduced humanity to interstellar war." The transmission ended. Silence consumed the bridge. Outside the viewport, Earth burned beneath drifting wreckage while thousands of human ships continued fighting through orbital firestorms. Humanity had entered the galaxy. Violently. Permanently. And there was no reversing it now. High Commander Veyratha's final emergency transmission arrived moments later. Imperial Council decision confirmed. Full fleet withdrawal authorized. Not because the Valari had been defeated militarily. Not yet, but because for the first time in Imperial history, victory itself had become too dangerous. Retreat signals spread across the fleet. Valari warships began disengaging from Earth orbit under continuous human pursuit, while burning debris illuminated the atmosphere below. Human ships followed them all the way to the edge of the system, not to destroy them, to make sure they left. Near Jupiter, the ancient warning beacons drifted silently in darkness as Valari ships passed beside them once more. This time, Dorothy finally understood the message. Not a prison, not a quarantine, a warning label. Dangerous species. Do not accelerate. Too late now. Far behind the retreating fleet, Earth glowed against the blackness of space. Still scarred, still divided, still human, but no longer alone. And deep inside thousands of laboratories, shipyards, military academies, orbital stations, and research networks, humanity was already studying everything the Valari had left behind, learning, improving, preparing, because the war had changed the species forever. The galaxy just didn't know it yet, but someday, every civilization among the stars would learn the same lesson the Valari Empire learned above Earth. Never teach humanity how to fight you unless you are absolutely certain humanity cannot survive the lesson. Because if humanity survives, humanity remembers.